in a moment we're going to be joined by the chair of the African National Congress, the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, Gwede Mantashe. He'll be with you in just a moment. Let's recap where we are here live at Nasrec. The President has just completed his speech. He's been closing the conference, reading out the resolutions taken here at the policy conference. We've been hearing from him, and in a moment we're going to hear from the chair of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe. You'll know his view, of course, on several of the resolutions, around the Step Aside resolution, for example. We also understand that the President may, or someone from the ANC, I think the President himself, may in fact take some questions. So we are looking forward to that as well. Our live coverage continues here from the ANC's policy conference live at Nasrec. Just to recap some of the main statements made by the President, in particular, that conference has resolved to retain the Step Aside resolution. There are some caveats to that. And then also, of course, the fact that the conference has resolved that it will continue and backs and endorses the government's energy plans that were announced on Monday. So, with all of that, we are waiting for that press conference to continue. In our studio here, live at Nasrec, I'm joined now by the chair of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe. He, of course, wears a hat as a minister in the cabinet as well. Minister, it's been a long time. Good afternoon.
Hello, Steve.
How are you?
I'm okay. And how are you?
I'm good, thank you. You would have been watching the President. You would have been watching the speech. You would have been a big part of all of the conversations that have been coming through here. Do you think this policy conference has taken the ANC and South Africa any closer to fixing some of the big problems we have?
Conferences discuss and take resolutions. Now, the challenge every time we have that is the execution. Now, what we should be looking at is whether we have the capacity to execute. Do we have a competitive and capacity and capacitated apex of the state, for example? So that's all that is there. But the decisions are good, solid, rational. There is no emotional decision.
You say there's no emotional decision. I wouldn't disagree with you. I think some people watching this may be a bit disappointed that there was not more emotion around fixing, for example, the jobs crisis, that we need real urgency here.
The job crisis doesn't need emotion. It needs rationality and ability to apply policies consistently, target areas that can create employment. And if we can do that out of these resolutions, we'll do better.
Do you believe that these resolutions are going to do that? I mean, what's going to change, do you think?
You see, Steve, the problem with us as South Africans is that sometimes when change happens gradually,
sure,
we don't notice it. You know, we are now above where we were at the beginning of COVID-19. And nobody talks about that. Everybody just talks about the crisis. We have recovered. We have gone above where we were when COVID-19 started. We're beginning to see economic growth, for example. You see, the projection, which was 1.9, has been revised upwards to 2.3. So, to me, I notice those small details because it is those small details that give you concrete pointers. But in South Africa, we want instant solutions to everything. And if we can sustain the growth of the economy, I can tell you that there will be time lag between it creating jobs concretely, but it is a necessary formulation for employment creation. And to me, we must just focus on employment creation and begin to target labor-intensive sectors and make them work.
There's so much to do in that. I mean, agriculture has grown, agricultural output has grown, the citrus sector has grown dramatically. It's exporting to China for the first time. That's very important. We are seeing manufacturing still battling, and a lot of this is to do with electricity.
Yes.
The conference endorsing government's plans that were announced by the President on Monday night. How important is it that the ANC has given what seems to be a wholehearted endorsement of that?
ANC endorsed that plan and went further and put a lot of emphasis on the importance of base load. Because, let me emphasize that, the importance of base load. It's important to build renewables, but renewables have their own shortcomings. They need to be coupled with base load for a successful formula. And the conference endorsed that. Some of them are actually saying, please don't rush on this thing of closing coal. Because We must sustain base load, we must build renewables and partner them through. I'm having a long-standing view that actually the ultimate combination will be renewables and the nuclear. That will give us the ultimate combination for South Africa to sustain our electricity. For example, the time limit on renewables that you have is the energy availability factor for nuclear is above 80%, for coal is above 70% if it's normal, and for renewables it's about 33%, which means that you must triple the effort of building renewables. So you need that combination. And this conference reaffirmed my belief that a combination of technologies is a winner.
So nuclear takes at least 10 years to build a nuclear power plant. I haven't seen people do it more quickly than that, and I don't know if we would want them to rush a nuclear power plant.
No, I don't know. I don't know where you get that, Steve, because the movement from mega nuclear plants to modular nuclear plants make a huge difference even on the time frame for building.
Okay. Where I'm trying to get you to get to is, in the meantime, then, are you looking to gas?
Gas, let me give you an example. We've talked about opening a second generation capacity for the state.
So a second ESCOM?
Yes. I call it, second ESCOM is just a tech, but it's a second generation company. That's what we want to do. And people ask me, what do I think I'm envisaging with it? I said, the first thing we should do, take 3 power stations that are targeted for decommissioning, repurpose them for gas. And I've mentioned them. I said, if you get in Rena, Camden and Grootfontein, you repurpose them for gas, you actually extend the life of that energy supply. That means as you decommission power stations, you replace that capacity with alternative that is viable.
So I get that, and there's the strong argument. You could talk about transmission because that would help there too. Where would the gas come from? Because we don't have developed gas supplies in Southern Africa at this stage.
Namibia, Mozambican gas is sufficient for the initial program. We are doing exploration for gas. We go to court every time, but ultimately we must get our gas because there is a lot of deposit. The Minister of...
Are you sure of that? Sure there are a lot of deposits?
There's a lot of deposit. For example, we did an experiment on the shale gas, for example. Tested it, sent it to another developed country for verification. It's economical. A week ago, Minister Baba Christie issued regulations for it. That means we can start working on that. And there's a lot of gas everywhere in South Africa. We are pumping into it all the time. Actually, even prospects of petroleum.
Really? Petroleum?
Yes, because the discoveries of petroleum in Namibia by Total and Shell spread into our waters. So there's that potential.
Some people watching you, not me, some people watching you are going to say you're still flying the flag for fossil fuels and that you're going against the tide of history.
Can I tell you, Stephen, because we're fashionable about debating practical issues, we commit a lot of mistakes. Europe took a resolution first that, listen, nuclear and gas must be part of green transition. We rejected that as South Africans because we were told so. But Europe says, pragmatically, nuclear and gas must be part of the green transition. Russia closes its gas. Europe, in a big way, go back to coal generation, because they're not talking about, because Germany feels that, listen, we're moving green, but we can't do that in darkness. And they go back, revert back to coal. What we normally lose here is to be practical about our own developmental needs. And progress must talk to our developmental needs, rather than being fashionable about them. Developmental needs talk to reality of life for people.
At this stage, from the President's speech, the endorsement of that here about the electricity plan specifically, never mind the arguments about where it comes from, and I know you and I can argue for some time about that, when do you think we will get new megawatts to the grid?
If we go and service what is not decommissioned in ESCOM and it works, I'm sure in the next 3 months we'll see a big improvement.
Next 3 months?
Next 3 months. And if we get the skills back to ESCOM to work on those units, we'll actually resolve bigger part of that load shedding in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And 12 months' time, we should be having enough capacity to be able to build new capacity.
And more from renewables as well? I mean, that's already been coming on to the grid.
Renewables, I don't know why renewable people are so nervous about them. Actually, it's the fastest growing sector of energy. And we're allowing it not because we like to do that, because our policy says so. Okay, our policy says grow renewables, and we're doing it. But I see a lot of nervousness that renewables...
Because you back coal, that's why.
No,
that's why people are nervous.
No, they're nervous because when you talk renewables, you must not talk only other technology. I'm a great believer of a combination of technologies, not coal. Actually, coal, even if you go to the IRP, is the smallest allocation in the IRP, if you notice that. We have given a lot of allocation to renewables, bigger one on gas, which we must increase, and we're talking about possibility of 2,500 megawatts nuclear. That is moderate, and that is actually practical.
I would like to ask about one other big resolution that was here. The President talking about the step-aside resolution being retained. You support that. I mean, you wanted it to be retained before the conference.
Yes.
Why is it so important?
It is important because it communicates a very important message from the ANC that we are serious about people who are on the wrong side of law, that they must not be part of the face of the ANC. And it is important that they must step aside. If they are cleared, well and good. If they're not cleared, the outcome is different. But step aside is important. If we scrap it, we will be sending a message to society that we are not worried about corruption, we are not worried about actually being on the wrong side of law as leadership of the ANC. So that resolution is quite important. We take note of the concerns that were expressed about let's be consistent in the application of that resolution. Let's not allow ourselves to have a resolution that is applied selectively. We accept that. And if there are those cases, we must pay attention to those cases. But it's an important resolution.
Is it being applied unfairly? I've been scratching my head trying. I mean, it's pretty simple. If you're charged, you step aside, right? And I don't know of anyone who's been charged and hasn't stepped aside, and all the people who've been charged have stepped aside. So when people say it's been unfairly, and this is KwaZulu-Natal generally, I don't know of what examples they're talking about.
I don't know. I hope they are going to give us examples. Because when you deal with things like step aside, you can only deal with them concretely when you deal with cases. No, we're waiting for those cases to come to the fore. We'll deal with them if they come to the fore.
The Zondo Commission is also important. There was also discussions about that.
It was endorsed.
Yes.
That is a good resolution, but caution was made that on issues of state, let's accept it wholeheartedly. But when it starts to tamper with political space, we must be more cautious, because political parties can't be functions of commissions. Because if we are a party, let me give you an example. Resolutions of the Zondo Commission on deployment, still unconstitutional is bad and so forth. And I took them to read the constitution of the ACTP. ACTP says you can't join the ACTP unless you are God-fearing and you are a Christian. Now, it's not a big deal. The DA takes a very sharp parliamentarians in parliament, making him a mayor of Cape Town. That is deployment. But it should be this cadre development of the ANC that is wrong. Every party in the world does deploy capacity at its disposal. And we can't be told that deploying capacity at our disposal is an offense.
Are you still going to challenge the finding of the Zondo Commission report as it pertains to you? You have filed?
Yes.
And you're confident that you're going to win?
I filed it because to me it doesn't make logical sense to say terms of reference don't cover the case and to go and test it and you say there's no prima facie case. Then you say I'm referring to any other institution. to investigate. They may find prima facie case. It doesn't make sense. That's all I'm challenging, is the logic. If the terms don't cover me, actually, that case should have been closed at that point. If you test it further, and you find that there's no prima facie case, to continue saying we'll refer to somebody else, you say, go and look for a case. It can't be fair.
This is the end of the policy conference, the end of the December conference. Who's going to be leader of the ANC?
My reading of the situation is that Cyril is the president and he has a right to stand for a second term. I have no issue with that.
You're not going to nominate or second anyone else, you'll back him?
Otherwise, if we do that, we do chop and change. We're not making the ANC stronger and better.
You're not worried about Phala Phala?
I'm worried, but I think what we should never do for Cyril Ramaphosa and anybody else, we must never start by making a judgment before processes. We must have processes, and the outcomes of those processes must determine the steps to be taken. If, for example, the Integrity Commission makes a determination, that determination will be respected. And the President has met the Integrity Commission twice already. If there is an outcome that determines something else, it will be respected. If the SARS comes to a conclusion that there were tax laws that were tampered with, and therefore make a determination, we'll look into that and take action. If the Reserve Bank look at exchange controls and come to a determination that exchange controls were tampered with, we'll have to take action about that. But any effort to actually frog march that ahead of processes will be a wrong outcome. It's never done with anybody. It should not be done now.
Minister, thank you very much indeed for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Gwede Mantashe, of course, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, also the chair of the African National Congress.